Nyonji Morzor, New Major, Zoner Monum Jimboringa Gada, Bakardangan to Shermurdo. Stumbati Jala Jonzorlo, Nijaror Telling Jankamsa, Jaurtition, Laelan. Jimmy Benzo Jala Sorando, Condu Tobambo Roshinjilo, Condu Tobambo Roshinjilo, Condu Tobambo Roshinjilo.
Profound and subtle Dharma is rarely encountered in eons. Now we can hear and follow it. May we realize the Tathagata's meaning. To liberate all the sentient beings, please give rise to the unsurpassed and supreme bodhicitta.
Yang di zi shan zi san hua qin bu sa yin nian bu zhong den de lan der ke de so ra. Zhenbab zhong den de de ke de nan zang wen leng ge sem chen er nam ji gen long dang gem shu tam chi dik ba ma yin ba men la. Ga zhi de ge wi pan ba zhong zi top jiang. Shin mang bu top mi sem de ni nian ber ji ra dang. Ga zhi me ge wi jian dam chan na de ni ga ji ge ri zhen dan per wen ji ri. Gang zeng de de na per na Dur jipo karne damzib ki nang da zhut Chachit zhupa vizhin da ngar jang tabne kar yang jir songne konstub ndur matabar tabar jirwa na Shtewa ngo shiba ji gong ne Di te la chuk shi de kar chashi sam kar Tamchit de karwa na Shtewa te nam tu chimbo dang dambe Di chukla ten ne konstub kyang tambur jirnem tar Rangag mgir de lip tup jang de ne zong Lam ngamba te tak la mumjut par shibab jano. Zambab chongdan de digbar kumbi semchin nam jir digba chim cha ane hukdu mepi var. Sagjan tir tawir digbi wakchak janji semchin namna namjik tsim pubana di pama da nyenkur namji de la lamjik ki chetab sunum ji tsuk subar sharte. Gdig dang vadan jangwa dang jodar jangwa Marme barwa dang stagdam don ba dang sangje dang shangchib san hui gzig lam chopan barne zong yana sangje dang shangchib san hua rangjir jim chan lang chik jut zamne di jar nam chikamir nalam da ligba gam yana jate dag tune gangzig di gangji kamsa wakchig jikbar jirna shir semchin te dag rang ge lengen sig bir topki ngibar de ngansong gne sir tongrim nyor jirna yang Ardungur nyor jirna yang nyenkur namji ter ter giwi tsa chimber gidan kin la tenni semchin te tak digbar nam yongso shangrin gyoro gachit mum tot shiur jis jig dan chig dangi nang da gesar gya chimbo chimba na semchin te tak ngansong go ne dang tan da cha de la da mi dewa pasum sobam nyorin gyoro Dela tenne tati nyenkur nan lagang pamba khutme pa tobran gyoro dina dakter jondan de laglar devje tang madang mamayar namdang khongbur shine zamwalang ge semsir namlan dirtit da karo sharte gangzak gangjing jirtin de ne tsempu bana di ched semchin sapa dang digba le shi ba ter Tenja Jungbo Namda Manchib Shipper Mushago, Techishina Ganzak Ganga Manchib Shibi, Shore Namla Pambar Putzum Mepper Mazit, Taylor Dochte, Digbele Taylor, T. Stopki, Digbele T. Stopki, Tiger Stopki, T. Stopki, Tiger Stopki. Digbele T. Stopki, Narman. Chi jirim gyuru gachit semshin dugam maung jikten namsa gangzak gangar gewi le chungzi gide ladang mi nangdar keverin girnagang di gnyennir namjir digba le shibi gangzak de nyen tsem pubana yittum mugung nambar narnahman nyamsam nyang ne denju ne sir kewagam nyangwarin girna gangzak gangzik jikten dene tsem pubana Di gewar tsawa chungz kyang mafshi bayin na di stopki ngansong gongne sir dungur nyamsam nyungwa nar huma goso. Dina nyewa gangzak di che ta tatong digba lek sokpa na chirtar zote zubur mari so. Khwairina mangajik tak rangbo ni gongde nyen xamgi rangla zi kyang mazo dele kyang gyama gya gir jitsit ki kir chimbo yang kir guba tang. Flariyan di kimsi ki majiki Dela Nurze Gjan Namjang Nane Kurdab Chigna, Dena Chi Shite Lamdo Jut Mutaparan Gerwar Tawo, Jundan de Dakotena, Zamolang Semjin Namjang Sanji Tambandar, Tanak Givers Sava Jones Gibarte, Cha Nyangmatan, Chanigma Zamdang, Chitig Zamdang, Shema Chig Zamdang, the Charab, the Trunk Chigzam Shenagang, Deepanyu, Tamsi the Ranga Tober Jira Yano, Dice.
Today, many of our Dharma friends here have been reciting sutras all day long and might be feeling a bit tired. In that case, I will finish the teaching very quickly today in just 2 or 3 minutes. Just kidding, 2 or 3 minutes is impossible. Today we begin chapter 7 of the Ksitigarbha Sutra, which is the chapter on benefiting the living and the deceased. This chapter mainly teaches us how, through the Ksitigarbha Sutra, living people, those who are still alive, can gain benefits. And at the same time, it teaches how, through the Ksitigarbha Sutra, the deceased can be liberated and gain benefits. These are the 2 main aspects covered in this chapter. Let us continue right away. First, I will briefly share a story. In the past, during the Song dynasty, there was a monk named Ding Fa. Every month, he habitually created paintings of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. He himself was likely skilled in painting. He continuously prayed to be able to see Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva in person. After 3 years had passed, one day a monk, a wandering monastic, came to his monastery. This monk requested lodging for the night. He needed a place to stay overnight. At that time, Ding Fa went to welcome him and agreed to let him stay. At that moment, the wandering monk spoke 2 sentences to him. What did he say? Your wonderful aspiration has been fulfilled, yet why is your motivation so limited? Your wonderful aspiration has been fulfilled. This means your excellent wish has already been accomplished. Then he said, why is your motivation so limited? This means, why is his aspiration so short-sighted, so narrow? At that time, the monk said these 2 sentences to him. What was the meaning of what was just said? It was because this monk had been continuously wishing to see Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. Throughout those 3 years, he had been praying in this way, painting images every month. His wish had already been fulfilled, but his aspiration was very shallow and limited, so he himself also came to understand this. Later, that monk had disappeared. He felt that this must have been some kind of sign meant for him. What this actually meant was that he himself had only aspired to see Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, so his aspiration was not ultimate or complete. From that time onward, he changed his intention. One day, he had a dream at night, and he heard a voice saying that the monk who had come was actually Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. But Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva's message was that your wish had been temporarily fulfilled, but he was reminding you that you should continuously generate the supreme mind of awakening bodhicitta. Through his temporary aspirations, since he had created so many painted images because of this reason, in all future lifetimes he would not fall into the lower realms. But if he continues to generate bodhicitta in the future, when Maitreya Buddha appears in this world, he could become part of Maitreya's retinue and receive the prophecy of attaining Buddhahood. Before that time, Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva would remain inseparable from him. After he woke up, he was deeply moved. He renounced all of his possessions and resources to create a life-size statue of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. Inside the statue, he placed all the images of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva that he had painted before. He used them as consecration materials within the statue. Then he continuously made prostrations before the sacred statue of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. In this way, later, this sacred image emitted light, and various remarkably miraculous occurrences took place. So in this story, whether we are praying to Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva or practicing any Dharma teachings, it is best to make aspirations with a long-term goal in mind. Just like Ding Fa in the beginning, he only wished to see Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva and had no other aspirations. Actually, this kind of aspiration is not very ultimate or complete. No matter what Dharma practice we engage in, including which sutras you recite or what virtuous deeds you perform for any activity at all, you should think that in the beginning it might be contrived or artificial, not very natural. You need to artificially cultivate the intention to benefit all sentient beings. gradually, our minds can be transformed. Therefore, your aspirations and motivations will definitely become genuine and authentic. This passage also teaches that the blessings of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva are truly inconceivable. Today, let us continue right away with the teaching. At that time, Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva Mahasattva addressed the Buddha saying, "World-honored one, I observe that the living beings of Jambudvipa, in every movement of their minds and thoughts, these are nothing but wrongdoing." Earlier, it was also stated, the living beings of Jambudvipa, in their every action and thought, all is karma, all is wrongdoing. Here, the same statement appears for the second time. The majority of living beings in our world, actually in their arising thoughts and mental movements, they create much negative karma. Much of it is negative karma. Much of it is wrongdoing that they create. Actually, if we observe carefully sometimes, many people can truly feel this about their own minds. For example, virtuous minds, faith, compassion, altruism, loving kindness. For us ordinary beings, these are not the majority of our thoughts. Our greed, anger, jealousy, arrogance, and other unwholesome states of mind, such as deceitful minds or thieving minds, all sorts of negative minds frequently emerge. So generally speaking, we living beings of Jambudvipa, or we could say we ordinary worldly beings, our minds frequently, in every movement of thought, contain some element of wrongdoing. Even if there are occasions when we generate virtuous minds and gain some virtuous benefits, these occur only occasionally, like flashes of lightning in the dark night. But the majority of the time, due to karmic obscurations from past lives and various temporary conditions, after being covered by these, people retreat from their initial resolve. Moreover, if they encounter negative conditions, then in every thought their negativity increases, especially if they meet negative friends or teachers, bad environments, or extremely unwholesome influences, including books promoting wrong views or all sorts of negative conditions. Our negative karma increases in every thought, continuously accumulating. Precisely because of this, the 400 stanzas on the middle way also states, because most people hold to unwholesome ways, most ordinary beings fall into the lower realms.
파르모치 디나 소소kin 파르모치 파르치 중간로 내선로
Among the people in our world, the majority of people engage in unwholesome actions and create negative karma. Therefore, the majority of ordinary beings will fall into the lower realms. Why is the hell realm the most populated? Next comes the hungry ghost realm, then the animal realm, and then our human realm. As you go higher, it becomes like a pyramid, fewer and fewer beings. In the celestial realm, such as the formless heavens, because their meditative requirements are quite high, there are probably not very many beings there. I do not know exactly how many celestial beings there are in the formless heavens. We humans now number over 7 billion. Perhaps we are slightly more numerous than the beings in the formless heavens. But in any case, when we compare beings in the lower realms with those in the upper realms, there should be fewer beings in the upper realms. In our world, when comparing people who create negative karma with those who create virtuous karma, there should be fewer people who create virtuous karma and more who create negative karma. Among us practitioners as well, those who truly succeed in their practice, who obtain a human life with freedoms and advantages, a precious human body, these can be said to be as rare as stars in the sky. When we look at many of the people around us, actually, those who practice according to the teachings, who study and contemplate properly, such people are not very numerous. So Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva asked the world-honored one, I see that the living beings of Jambudvipa, that is to say the beings of this world, still create much negative karma. For these people who are like this, it is as if they are walking in a mire, in an extremely damp and muddy swamp filled with water. There is a person carrying an extremely heavy load, several 100 pounds of stone, huge boulders, as they walk. Gradually, the farther they walk, the deeper they sink. Because the rocks they are carrying are also very heavy, and the place where they are walking is in this mire and muddy water in a swamp. The deeper they walk, the more they sink. Eventually their feet have already sunk down, sinking deeper and deeper. They simply cannot move at all. Actually, many ordinary beings are truly like this. In the beginning, they might occasionally generate some virtuous thoughts, generate some compassion, occasionally engage in virtuous practices. But in the end, those who truly practice perfectly and completely, making more and more progress, except for those whose karmic connections from past lives were especially good, such people are also not numerous. Sometimes now, when I ask about former Dharma friends, what are these people doing? Where is this person? Where is that person? When we look at many people ourselves, the majority of people who are truly practicing extremely, extremely well. If that were the case, we might not necessarily be able to find them. Many people who were once extremely, extremely diligent are now constantly busy with their families, constantly feeling extremely distressed and afflicted. Many people in this worldly existence, the more they practice, the state of their practice might become worse for some of them. This is also a fact. So for people like this, like the person just mentioned who is carrying an extremely heavy load of stones, if such a person encounters someone familiar, some interpretations say this is a virtuous spiritual teacher, but it does not necessarily have to be a virtuous spiritual teacher. For example, this person is originally carrying several 100 pounds of stones, and as he continuously moves forward on such a difficult path, there is certainly some difficulty. If at this time he meets someone who carries part of your burden for him, or who takes on the several 100 pounds of stones that he is carrying, if this person takes on all of it, then this person, because he possesses great strength, will certainly be able to help him. He has great power. Perhaps while carrying his stones, the two of them lean on each other, support each other. This is all very good. Eventually, his feet begin to become stable, and his steps will not sink down so much. He walks steadily all the way. If he reaches his destination, he will certainly never again take the bad road he traveled originally. Through this person's help for him while carrying his burden, he will take this as a warning. He will never again fall into that dangerous path he traveled before. He will certainly be cautious. He will not experience that again. The meaning in this analogy is the same principle. We ordinary beings in the mire of samsara carry burdens of karma and afflictions that are extremely, extremely heavy. It is already very difficult for us to walk on our own. However, if we encounter virtuous spiritual teachers, all the burdens weighing upon you will be completely resolved, and they will bring you to a very safe place. Then you will certainly heed the advice of your virtuous spiritual teachers, and in the future you will never again go astray. You will feel, I suffered so much in samsara, I will never again enter such a dangerous path. Actually, each of us can see this from our own life's journey as well. We ourselves should be able to think this way. If we had not encountered virtuous spiritual teachers, if we had not met these gurus, we would truly be in the mire of samsara, continuously sinking. The farther we walk, the deeper we sink. Perhaps in this lifetime we have created much negative karma. In the next lifetime we would have to continuously create more negative karma, just like the person carrying the heavy burden just mentioned, eventually walking deeper and deeper. But fortunately, on this dangerous path of samsara, we have found extremely excellent virtuous spiritual teachers. Precisely because we have met virtuous spiritual teachers, each of us still has hope. As it is said, in the Sutra of the Collection of All Virtuous Roots, we should approach virtuous spiritual teachers who can obstruct our negativities. Virtuous spiritual teachers can obstruct all our unwholesome deeds. They teach in accordance with the path of the Buddha, because virtuous spiritual teachers obstruct all unwholesome deeds. They can teach us according to the Buddha's Dharma, allowing us to be tamed and transformed. At the same time, we obtain the most meaningful things in human life. Temporarily, the dharmas of good rebirths among humans and devas, and ultimately the virtuous dharmas of liberation. Therefore, having encountered such virtuous spiritual teachers is extremely, extremely wonderful for us. This was when Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva addressed the Buddha. He continued to teach. Regarding the situation of Jambudvipa, of our human world, Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva understood this very, very clearly. He continued saying, "World-honored one, living beings who are accustomed to evil begin with a minute amount, then quickly escalate into the measureless." He said, "We living beings of Jambudvipa now, these beings who have unwholesome habitual tendencies, in their mind streams, if their habitual tendencies are very severe, in the beginning they might create just a tiny bit of negative karma, drop by drop, but gradually, they commit every kind of evil. Eventually, the negative karma they create becomes boundless and immeasurable, extremely, extremely great. So for us ordinary beings, in the beginning, they might start with tiny bits of negative karma. For example, killing, stealing, or lying, or speaking divisive words. Starting bit by bit, continuously accumulating, eventually the negative karma they create becomes limitless and boundless. If these beings with such habitual tendencies do not properly engage in purification, at the time of their death, it is extremely frightening. Therefore, at this time, if there are parents or relatives who can create merit for them, they should create provisions for the road ahead in their journey, accumulating some virtuous provisions for them. This is extremely necessary because these beings might have created much negative karma in this very lifetime. If they continue to sink with these habitual tendencies, they might never have a time of liberation. So, whether it is the individual themselves or others doing things for them, including parents or relatives, before the time of death, at the time of death, or after death, creating some virtuous dharmas for them, cultivating merit, this is extremely important. What kinds of merit can be cultivated? What are the aspects of cultivating merit? Especially after a person has died, if family members create merit for them, what merit should be created? They can hang banners and canopies. Regarding these banners and canopies, at first I thought they were our ceremonial banners, but actually after examining it carefully, they should be what we now call prayer flags. In our Tibetan regions, after a person dies, they often make a large quantity of prayer flags, what we call prayer flags or prayer banners. The word flag or banner is a collective term for all types of banners. Actually, in ancient times, Tibetan prayer flags and Han Chinese prayer flags were slightly different. Some people think that so-called banners are like rectangular flags. But actually, if there is no writing on them, if you just make many pieces of cloth for the deceased with nothing but pieces of cloth, then there is no merit in that. It should not be anything meaningful. According to the Han Chinese tradition, on many prayer flags there are the names of Amitabha Buddha or Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva. Namo Amitabha Buddha, Namo Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva. There are also these. In the Tibetan tradition, generally on prayer flags there are mantras of Amitabha Buddha or mantras of Avalokiteshvara, mantras of Vajrasattva, and so on. Those who have been to Tibetan regions should all know this. In various places, whether on mountains or at places for the deceased, places where they cremate or sky burial grounds or water burial sites, there are prayer flags everywhere. Actually, the merit of prayer flags should be very great indeed. Here in our context, some people wonder, if we do this, is there any basis? Is there any basis in the Buddhist scriptures? Actually, in the Buddhist scriptures, we can find references to hanging banners and canopies. I also looked up some earlier texts, including some Han Chinese scriptures and Tibetan scriptures. In Tibetan scriptures, most of these references come from great accomplished masters like Karma Chakme Rinpoche and Karma Lingpa. There are quite a few references in their teachings. There are also quite a few in various Theravada texts. Also, there are some from Dakinis and some gurus in their Bardo travel journals. There are quite a few references there. In Han Chinese tradition, there is the Buddha Speaks of Abhisheka Sutra. This should be from the Eastern Jin dynasty, translated by a Tripitaka master from Kucha. I believe it has 12 volumes. I have not yet found it in Tibetan. Last year I looked for a long time but could not find it. Actually, in the sutra, it also mentions prayer flags. The banners flutter in the wind and eventually break into pieces. If these banners are blown by the wind, eventually they will all gradually break into pieces. They become dust, and the wind blows this dust. The merit is immeasurable. Gradually, these prayer flags turn into dust. When this dust blows onto any sentient being, actually, beings who see, hear, or come into contact with it also attain liberation. Furthermore, even when these prayer flags have completely disappeared, actually, as long as the wind blows even the tiniest particles of dust, that merit is also immeasurable. So what is mentioned here should be our prayer flags. In the Terma texts of many great masters in our Tibetan tradition, there are also descriptions of such merit. Just as I mentioned earlier, prayer flags are generally blown by the wind, and the beings touched by this wind, the beings who come into contact with it, will all attain liberation. So the merit of prayer flags is still very great. Perhaps now, in many places, due to environmental management and various reasons, perhaps we cannot randomly hang prayer flags everywhere. Because when hanging prayer flags, if we do so randomly, for example, by the roadside, next to buildings, at doorways, hanging them everywhere like this is actually not very good. They should be hung in a regulated manner, in very clean and pure places. Otherwise, now there are probably many environmental protection departments. When they see prayer flags, they become especially happy. Happy about what? When we were studying in school before, offering prayer flags to Dharma protectors was relatively restricted. At that time, things were not yet open. There was a person who at that time slandered, saying that these prayer flags were useless, and then started going there during the day to burn them and do all sorts of things. Later, he experienced karmic retribution. On that very day, various things happened to him, but I cannot speak about it too explicitly. This serves as one piece of evidence. Regarding banners, we are talking about prayer flags. So our Dharma friends here at Larungar, please do not hang them everywhere. On many of our roads before, pieces of prayer flags, after being blown by the wind, the worn-off pieces fall to the ground. If we step on them, there is still some fault in that, so we had better hang them in particularly clean places. We must pay attention to this. This is the first aspect. Whether for the deceased or for those who are dying, hanging prayer flags has great merit. This is the first point. The second aspect is lighting butter lamps. Lighting butter lamps also, if a person has died during the 49 days, try as much as possible not to let the lamp offerings be interrupted. If one has the conditions, for example, offering 100 lamps each day, 1,000 lamps, 10,000 lamps, there are cases like this. Generally speaking, in our Tibetan regions, we actually do this very well indeed. For example, after someone in a household dies, everyone goes together to help them. Some start printing prayer flags, some make lamps, some recite scriptures, some help them make offerings to the Buddha, all sorts of activities. All the people, everyone who comes to see them are all doing virtuous deeds. The entire process is like this. It is not that people come to give red envelopes, kill living beings, and create negative karma. It is not like that. So in this respect, it is truly very necessary to engage in virtuous practices. The first is what we just discussed, hanging prayer flags. The second is light offering. Generally, after a person dies, it is best to keep lamps burning continuously day and night without being extinguished. Especially during the 49 days, continuously keep 7 lamps or 1 lamp burning. Before the corpse is disposed of, certainly the lamps should not be extinguished. After the corpse has been disposed of, continue to offer lamps. These lamps are still very important. Then, reciting sutras and reading sacred scriptures, such as the Ksitigarbha Sutra, the Diamond Sutra, and also other scriptures, including the Sutra of Great Liberation and chanting the names of Noble Manjushri. In Tibetan regions, the Great Liberation through hearing in the bardo will definitely be recited for 49 days. In our regions, if a household has nothing at all, for example, if there is an elderly person who has no relatives or friends at all, people will pool together some money. People from the surrounding village, people who know each other, will all pool money together to recite sutras for 7 days, or for 2 7-day periods, or 3 7-day periods. If the family has the means but does not recite for 49 days, everyone will regard this as particularly unfilial or as a joke. Everyone will think this way. This family did not even recite sutras for 49 days. They will say this. Actually, some places probably do not do this. Perhaps they do not have these conditions, do not have this tradition or custom. After a person dies, everyone gathers for 2 or 3 days, then the matter is handled, and after handling it, everything is done. This way of doing things may be unavoidable. In the past, in places like ours, around the 1950s and 60s, during the famine years, at that time, indeed, there was no sutra recitation. After people starved to death, they were directly left there. At that time, it was under a special historical background. Later, when everyone had various conditions available, we would often hear people say, such and such person in our family, when they died back then, we directly buried them. Then they would try to find a way. We did not even light a single lamp for them, did not even hang a single piece of prayer flag. At that time, they died like that and just departed like that, so everyone felt particularly regretful. Later, when the conditions were available, they would definitely try to find the ashes, recite sutras for them again, and bury them again. There were situations like this. So regarding our larger historical context and environment, if we cannot change these as monastics or practitioners or within one circle of relatives and friends, if a family member dies at such a time, one should at least have a few people. For example, during the 49 days, if there are some monastics, even if it is just 3 or 4 people, or 1 or 2 people, reciting, chanting the names of Noble Manjushri every day, or what we taught a few years ago, there is a specific text for reciting for the deceased. What is it called? the ritual of liberating the dying and the deceased, right? In these texts, reciting it once every day would also be acceptable. Also, we have some lay practitioners who assist with chanting. It would be best to do this for 49 days. Now, in many cases, after 7 days, people no longer recite. Also, making offerings to Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and the images of great masters from the past, making various offerings, as well as reciting the names of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and also the names of Pratyeka Buddhas, name by name. If the dying person has not yet died, recite these sutras at the ear of the dying person, or let them be heard in the fundamental consciousness. Recite these sutras in the presence of the dying person's ear, including creating these merits. In their fundamental consciousness, this should be the alaya consciousness, plant a virtuous habitual tendency in their alaya consciousness. Before the time of death, create such virtuous roots for them. In this way, actually, the merit is also very great, and they can also attain liberation. If these beings' negative karma were truly to ripen and bear fruit, they would certainly fall into the lower realms. If relatives and friends for the dying person cultivate such virtuous causes, although originally their negative karma was extremely severe, because of creating these virtuous deeds, all of it will be dissolved and they will all attain liberation. It is also said in the Buddha Speaks of Abhisheka Sutra, if the deceased in their lifetime had negative karma that would cause them to fall into the 8 circumstances that prevent true practice of the Dharma, the merit of hanging banners and lighting lamps will certainly bring them liberation. Whether we hang prayer flags or offer lamps or do other things, such as reciting the Great Liberation through hearing in the bardo or reciting Mahayana Sutras, they will definitely attain liberation. They will certainly attain liberation. So for the deceased, offering lamps and hanging prayer flags, and also we can make tisatsas. These are truly very important. Creating these virtuous roots, actually it may seem very simple, but in fact the merit is also very great for them. Just like what we discussed yesterday. Originally she would have had to continue suffering the pain of dying from difficult childbirth, but because her husband made a statue of Ksitigarbha, in the future she would no longer continue to experience the same suffering. In the past there was a famous person called Fan Zhongyan. It is said that after his mother died 21 days later, she spoke to him in a dream. She said that she was now in the intermediate state and suffering greatly. If he did not quickly create merit for her, she was very likely to fall into the hell realms. She asked him to recite the Merit Sutra. This Merit Sutra, she repeatedly urged, was the Diamond Sutra. After Fan Zhongyan woke up, his heart was very anxious. Then he immediately went to a monastery and asked them to recite the Diamond Sutra. They recited for about 7 days. On the 6th day, he had another dream. She said, "Because of the merit you created for me this time, now I do not have to fall into the lower realms. Moreover, I can be reborn in the celestial realms." These monastics reciting sutras even moved Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva. Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva came among your monastics to recite sutras. If you do not believe it, you can go to the monastic assembly tomorrow and have a look. He recited only half of the sutra. Then the next day, Fan Zhongyan went to the monastery and asked, "Among you monastics, is there anyone who recited only half of the sutra?" They said, "No, we recite sutras very completely. We would absolutely never recite only half of a sutra." Then an old monk said, "Yesterday, when I was reciting the sutra, I did not recite it completely, because when I recited to the halfway point, you came, so I went to the kitchen." At this moment, his dream from yesterday and these facts corresponded exactly. Then Fan Zhongyan began to prostrate to him. That old monk said, "Mo, meaning please do not, please do not." "No, no, no," he said, while directly rising into the air, and then gradually disappeared. At that time, everyone knew that this old monk was actually a manifestation of Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva. Later, Fan Zhongyan built the Momo-chan meditation hall to commemorate this event. This account also demonstrates, first of all, that his mother had the monastics recite the Diamond Sutra. The merit of this in the intermediate state ultimately enabled her to obtain the merit of a good rebirth to the upper realms. At the same time, for people like him, a literary figure and a worldly renowned person, when they personally encounter such situations in their own lives, actually many people in our worldly existence ordinarily seem as if they have no faith. But actually, when they themselves truly encounter some special situations in their lives, many people do have faith. They cannot help but acknowledge certain facts. Here as well, everything disappears. All negative karma is eliminated. If during the 49 days after death, various virtuous roots are created, this can enable these beings to permanently leave the three lower realms and obtain the excellent and wonderful happiness of humans and devas. The benefits for the living relatives are also immeasurable and boundless. So here it teaches that after a person dies, one should perform practices for 49 days. Why is this so? Because after 49 days have passed, according to the Abhidharma perspective, basically rebirth has already occurred. However, there are individual beings with special karma who indeed might not be able to take rebirth. In a forest of gem in the garden of Dharma, there was a person from the Song dynasty. After more than 30 years, he still had not taken rebirth. He continuously possessed people and spoke through them, requesting that 30 monastics come to recite sutras for him and so on. Eventually, he attained liberation. There are such accounts. Our revered guru, His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche, also taught before that in some Dakinis travel journals, after 3 years had passed, there were still those who had not been able to take rebirth. There are individual beings in the bardo for whom 49 days is still not sufficient. It seems that in some sutra we taught last year, there was a sutra that also mentioned 2 years or some such duration. There are such cases. Was it not the Vimalakirti Sutra? What sutra was it? At that time, I seem to have mentioned it. So why is it that if there are such situations, why do we speak of 49 days? Actually, it is speaking generally. For example, generally speaking, for a country's visa, they will give you a reply within 7 days. For some special circumstances, perhaps even in a year, they cannot give a reply. There are such situations. So in our Buddhist sutras as well, for beings with special karma, it is not necessarily within 49 days that they attain liberation. There are also such cases, just like what I discussed yesterday. Why is it that in our Tibetan regions it is also like this? There is King Yama, which is equivalent to truly entering in front of a judge. In Han Chinese traditions, there are also such accounts, but this, when our sentient beings receive punishment, there is such a corresponding process similar to a prison in the human world. So sentient beings are truly in such circumstances. We cannot say this is provisional teaching. We should say this is definitive teaching. When we dream, there are all sorts of forms and appearances. Actually, in dreams, logically speaking, we do not truly have this current physical body. But when we are dreaming, it is truly exactly the same as my current physical body. This is due to habitual tendencies. So perhaps regarding King Yama, for example, if a person is Indian, the form of King Yama before them should be of the Indian type, related to their own karma from their previous life. It should appear before them as an Indian-looking person with a beard, with something like 7 horns on the head or whatever form it might take. Perhaps for Han Chinese, for Tibetans, including people of different ethnicities, according to their own usual habits, many people appearing before them will also appear in this way. This is due to the habitual tendencies in our alaya consciousness. It is just like this. This has extremely profound meaning. I hope that everyone regarding this issue will contemplate carefully. If you contemplate, you will understand many principles in the Buddhist sutras. So here, during the 49 days, we should recite sutras for them. This is very important. In our monastery, there is a special space for liberation ritual for the deceased. When someone in any family dies, they can recite sutras there for 49 days. Basically, throughout spring, summer, autumn, and winter, all 365 days, there are several rooms there. Altogether, there might be around 10 rooms, but sometimes they are all completely full because this family has someone die, that family has someone die. For example, if 10 people die, these 10 rooms are all full. Sometimes 2 or 3 rooms are occupied. Sutras are recited every day for 49 days. The other day when I went to the monastery, when we were talking about this, someone said, "It is the office for the deceased." the hotel for the deceased. This was said jokingly. They call the rooms for liberation ritual for the deceased this way. So for the deceased, we should do some virtuous deeds. This is extremely, extremely important, especially as I mentioned earlier, at the time of death, creating such merit in the alaya consciousness. This is very important. Actually, the treatise on the great perfection of wisdom also teaches, although practicing virtue throughout life, if one generates an unwholesome thought at the time of death, one will be born in a lower realm. It says that if throughout one's entire life one performs virtuous deeds, but if at the time of death one gives rise to an unwholesome thought, then one will be reborn in the lower realms. Although committing evil throughout life, if one has a virtuous thought at the time of death, one will be born in the celestial realms. If throughout one's life one commits evil, but at the time of death one has some virtuous mind, then this person will be reborn in the celestial realms. So we see that for some individual people at the time of death, I have also taught this before. According to the Vinaya perspective, we absolutely must not, in the presence of this person, say things like, your negative karma is very great. You will probably fall into the lower realms. We must not speak like this. Rather, we should say, all of these things from your past, through the blessings of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, they will very quickly be completely purified. Just like before we go to sleep, we should not think about this matter or that matter. Otherwise, we cannot even fall asleep and we will have nightmares. If before I sleep I visualize my guru, I generally try my best before sleeping to pray to my guru. Then, when falling asleep, I try my best to adjust my state of mind into a virtuous state. In this way, my dreams should also be virtuous. So when we are dying, we should still try our best. We ourselves should also adjust and make our minds virtuous. In the past, why did the great masters of earlier generations often teach that when a person is dying, it is best not to wail and cry loudly beside them? Actually, there is also reason in this. There is a text called Longshu's Pure Land text. In that text, it also teaches that when a person is dying, one must not sigh loudly or wail and cry loudly. If this happens, it will directly affect the deceased. So after learning the Dharma, when we perform these virtuous deeds, we ourselves should be able to do them well. We should not be like, oh no, someone in our family has died. What should I do? What should be done during the 49 days? All the knowledge we have already learned. When the time comes, we cannot apply it. When encountering such matters, we make a phone call. It's like, someone in our family has died. What should I do? What should be done during the 49 days now that the person has died? After the person has stopped breathing, what should I do? You have already studied for such a long time. Why do you still need to ask such things? There is nothing to ask. Yes, in the future, do not ask about principles that have already been taught countless times. You yourself should handle what needs to be handled. What is there to ask? Some of our Dharma friends have already studied for many years, but when they encounter such matters, they start asking all over again. So, regarding what I have discussed above, truly, as I just mentioned, whether it is humanistic Buddhism or how to handle things after a person has died during the 49 days, whether reciting sutras, hanging prayer flags, releasing life, or offering lamps, these are extremely important. In the future, everyone should practice in this way. Next it says, Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva spoke. Therefore, today, in the presence of the world-honored one, as well as Devas, Nagas, and others of the 8 classes of beings, humans, non-humans, and others, let these serve as witnesses, or before all of you. I am telling the living beings of Jambudvipa, at the time of death, there is one matter that must certainly be carefully noted. Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva tells us, what must we be careful about? Be most careful not to kill or harm beings. At the time of death, after a person has died in 1995, when our revered Guru, His Holiness, manifested illness and stayed in Pidu district for a very long time, every time I saw them, when people died, they would beat gongs and drums. When they dispose of the corpse, they would bring a live chicken along to the disposal site. Seeing the scene was particularly cruel, so we absolutely must not kill beings for sacrificial offerings or create negative karma. At that time, creating all sorts of negative karma, also worshipping ghosts and spirits, seeking help from goblins and spirits and so forth, these absolutely must not be done. Why must they not be done? Why is this so? If you kill and harm beings, including creating negative karma and making sacrificial offerings, as just mentioned, for the deceased, there is not the slightest bit of benefit, not even a tiny amount. For the deceased, there is absolutely not even the tiniest bit of benefit. In the Dharmapadavadana Sutra, which I have quoted before, seeking merit through killing only drives merit far away. If one wishes to obtain benefit through killing, this is fundamentally an impossible thing. This is a fantasy, a fundamentally impossible thing. If one creates such karmic connections of wrongdoing, then negative karma will increase and escalate continuously, like adding fuel to the fire. There is absolutely no benefit whatsoever. Originally, this deceased person, they themselves are already suffering greatly in all sorts of ways. Previously, the negative karma they themselves created is continuously manifesting. On top of this, relatives and friends create more negative karma for them. This is even more frightening. Suppose in the future life, or in the current life, originally this person, relying on their own merit, or because others created virtuous karma for them, obtained elements of holiness, and attained some liberation, including having hope for rebirth in the Pure Land, or attaining the level of a Bodhisattva, or attaining liberation in the human and celestial realms. But because, at the time of death, their family members make sacrificial offerings and kill beings for them, relatives create such negative causes for them, for this person, originally they would have attained liberation, but because others created negative karma for them, when he is on the verge of death, he will become involved in dispute. Because of their karma, it becomes complicated, and it is impossible to analyze it clearly right away. Originally, they had already, for example, some people try to find a way to be released early from prison, but later, because some people are also doing certain things, because of this reason, the matter becomes complicated and there is no way forward. Then, delayed from being reborn in an upper realm. Originally, they would very quickly be reborn in the upper realms and attain liberation. They had great hope, but later, because of creating such negative karma for them, there is no longer any way to be reborn in the Pure Land or attain liberation. How much more so for those at the time of death? If the person themselves had never created any virtuous roots before, and the negative karma they possess is already extremely severe, then they will certainly experience the suffering of the lower realms according to their own karma. How could they possibly bear the negative consequences created by these relatives? This should not be. So most of us should also understand this clearly. After a person dies, to continue creating negativity for them is truly extremely frightening. After a person dies, everyone together begins to kill beings and make sacrificial offerings. In many religions now, after a person dies, it is said that they should be buried together with other beings, such as sheep, cattle. There are such practices. Even people, in the past, there were also such evil customs. This is an extremely frightening thing. Next, an analogy is given. For example, there is a person who has come from afar. For 3 days and nights they have not eaten anything. Moreover, what they are carrying already exceeds 100 pounds, extremely, extremely heavy. At this time, another person comes and adds an extremely heavy object to their load, another thing continuing to add it on top of this. Because of this, they certainly cannot even move forward. Originally, the karmic burden of these beings is already very heavy. Then on top of this, if you add some more negative karma for them, that is even more frightening. So the actions of some of our relatives and friends not only fail to help them attain liberation, but may actually create obstacles for them. In some places there are such bad customs. This is extremely frightening. He finally said, "World-honored one, I see the living beings of Jambudvipa." Next, he speaks in the opposite way. If the living beings of Jambudvipa truly, within the Buddhist teachings, taking the 3 jewels as the object of refuge, perform even the tiniest virtuous deeds, taking the Buddha as the object, the Dharma as the object, the Sangha as the object, even as tiny as a single hair, a single drop of water, a single grain of sand, a tiny speck of dust, if they create such merit, the fruition they receive will certainly be obtained by themselves. So this is extremely necessary. For us now, especially while we ourselves are still alive, this is still very good. Otherwise, you might tell your family members, after I die, you must recite sutras well for me for 49 days. But after you die, let alone 49 days, they might not even recite sutras for 49 hours. There is an old saying, once the person is gone, the tea grows cold. After the person has departed, the behaviors of your relatives may all change. So while we ourselves are still alive, personally creating some virtuous deeds and virtuous roots ourselves is still very important. Regarding virtuous deeds and virtuous roots, even if they are just a tiny bit, here it also teaches we don't need to perform grand meritorious deeds. For example, even offering one lamp or one stick of incense, doing one prostration, reciting the Mani mantra once, reciting Namo Buddha once, or even just joining palms with one hand. When seeing some excellent objects of refuge, regularly not generating anger, not generating jealousy, being in suffering every day, if it is like this, one continuously creates negative karma. One should be in a state of pure mind, creating even a tiny bit of virtuous karma. This merit is also inconceivable. It is said in the treatise on the common end of myriad good deeds, if in the merit field of the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, one can perform virtuous deeds as little as a strand of hair, he will possess grand merit no matter where he takes rebirth. Such merit is inexhaustible. Even if we create just a tiny bit of virtuous roots, especially when we create virtuous deeds in connection with the merit field of the three jewels, this is very meaningful. If we do not do it now, everything is impermanent. There is a verse in the compendium of the Teaching Sutra that is very well said. I personally quite like it. How does it go? All happiness has its end. All loved ones have to be apart. All lives will come to die. Please learn and practice the Dharma while still alive. This verse has three alls. The meaning is, all happiness, in the end, all happiness will come to an end. All love, in the end, there will also be separation. All life, our current life, will ultimately also come to an end. Therefore, before we die, we should learn and practice the Dharma while still alive. What should be practiced, practice. What should be studied, study. Otherwise, life is short. If you keep waiting and waiting, saying, I am too busy now, I'm too tired now, my mood is not good now, my health is not good now, and so on. You keep having 100 reasons, 999 excuses, talking and talking and talking, procrastinating like this. But when impermanence truly arrives, you may indeed be, as I just mentioned, realizing that all happiness is impermanent. Nothing can be relied upon. All love is also unreliable. All our lives ultimately also have no reliability. So sometimes when we look, truly all phenomena are continuously changing, yet we worldly people have a kind of deluded ignorance of similar continuity. What is it called? The illusion of similar continuity, right? All right, it seems it is not similar continuity. There is a term, but I do not remember it very clearly. Yesterday's bottle and today's bottle appear exactly the same. We cannot tell them apart. They have a common continuum. It is similar continuity, right? Same type of cause. All right, in any case, we should still recognize all phenomena now. Some time ago, I went to several practice centers. I told each monastic there, I said, as a practitioner, can we ideally have some certainty about ourselves, whether it is practicing impermanence, practicing emptiness, or practicing guru yoga? In any case, throughout one's life, one should have at least one area where one has confidence and certainty. For example, my practice of impermanence is very good. My Ngondro should be practiced very well. If you can practice all of these well, that is of course best. But if not, even faith alone can be like this. My faith in the three jewels is very good. My faith in my guru is very good. Some of us say, my faith in my guru is very good. But if one truly has very good faith in one's guru, the great masters of the past and some tantras teach this way. The Pratimoksha vehicle, the Bodhisattva vehicle, and Vajrayana are all different. In the Pratimoksha vehicle, the guru is like, there are different views. For example, in Vajrayana, if the guru is like the Buddha, this is also not reasonable. Rather, the guru is the Buddha, it is like this. In the Bodhisattva vehicle, the guru is like the Buddha, like a Bodhisattva. In the Pratimoksha vehicle, one may regard the guru as a teacher and have respectful mind toward them. This is acceptable. So each vehicle, not precepts, but what I just mentioned, the vehicles, Pratimoksha vehicle, Bodhisattva vehicle, Vajrayana, the requirements within Vajrayana are all different. So when we ourselves think we have faith in our guru, we may not necessarily have it. Regarding faith in the Buddha, sometimes we may not necessarily have it either. Do we have confidence and irreversible faith that is deeply rooted in our hearts and bones? So when we engage in practice, much of it remains only on paper, only in words. If this is the case when we truly need to apply the Dharma teachings in real life, I'm afraid this kind of practice will be very difficult to apply. Just like when the COVID-19 pandemic broke out this year, when many people were confined at home, this sense of fear, this anxiety, including some practitioners, Buddhists, they also had this. This shows that our usual demands upon ourselves are not very good. If in our daily practice we cultivate even just one or two practices in a relatively solid way, if we ourselves have some certainty, then when encountering issues of life and death or some major problems in life, you can handle them smoothly and effortlessly. You will not have any great suffering. You will be very, very calm. As long as we can put in the effort, I believe that in practice, the power of the Dharma will definitely be there. The power of the Buddha will definitely be there. However, if our faith is not very sincere, when we practice, when we recite with a relatively distracted mind, if we recite like this, there is some merit. Even if it is just a tiny bit, as we mentioned here, merit like a single hair or a single grain of sand, this will not be wasted. It exists. However, if we want it to truly take effect and cut the root of samsara, there is still some difficulty. So we should try our best in the presence of such excellent objects of refuge to practice well. Each person in their short human life should obtain some results from Dharma practice. Studying the Dharma now is also very important, but what is even more important is that each person should gradually and constantly practice virtuous dharmas, even if bit by bit. The meaning of practice is quite extensive. If we speak of the best kind of practice, it is observing one's own mind. Of course, we can recite sutras and perform these virtuous deeds. In a broad sense, this can also be called Dharma practice, but genuine practice is observing one's own mind, recognizing the nature of mind, and then eliminating the afflictions in one's own mind stream. This is the truly profound practice. This point, each of us should pay attention to it. That is all for today's teaching.
Bandhangara Padmasada Bandhangara Padmasada